Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and welcome to learning about VisualBasic.net. Well, we've been working on our text editor project, and we're adding the final bells and whistles to our program to make it special, a little bit more than Microsoft's Notepad. So in this particular one, we're going to introduce drag and drop. And if you go to Microsoft's Notepad, you'll find out it does not have drag and drop ability. But we're going to add that to ours, and I'll show you how to do it. But before we get started, let's take a look at where our documentation is for this program and for others. The documentation source code is at pastebin.com/u/jboh. There you'll find the source code. You can use it to examine more in detail the different commands and study it in your leisure time. Also, you'll see that you can download that code into your own program and modify it for your own particular purposes. And also, the screen of the main form is out at Imager, and you can take a look at it to help you in your own designing of your own particular text editor. And for other videos about this text editor, as well as others that I've created about VisualBasic.net, go to youtube.com and go to the Bolen Presents at YouTube. There you'll see a number of videos that I hope will help you become a better programmer and learn the process of programming. Well, let's get into our code. I have up on the screen the area of code that we're going to be working at. Basically, what we're going to be looking at as we go to the Forms Designer is we want to deal with moving our text around within the text box, as well as dragging and dropping it to other applications that accept drag and drop. This is a little bit more than just a cut and paste approach. This allows us to use our mouse button to highlight text and drag it around. Well, I've already added the code in. I want to show you what I've done and how I got to that point. So let me highlight the text box, which I called my text box in our program. And I want to show you that what I've added to this in the design time, as I go to the properties to this, you'll see that I've clicked on Allow Drop to True. That allows us to drag and drop into the text box if we have the code behind it to operate. Then I went to the events area, and here's where I added in some events. One of the first things I added in was the mouse down event. I'm going to slide this over a little bit so you can see it better. The mouse down event, and all I did was I double clicked on the mouse down event to create that code in the background. And also, as we start to move our mouse, I need to track that as well with the mouse move event. So these two events deal with the mouse itself. Then, as we relate to it specifically to dragging, there are a couple of options, and what I'm going to be using is the drag and drop area. So I'm going to go up to the drag, and you'll see that I have the as we come into our text box dragging, we need to activate some code there in the drag enter. So as I'm coming into the text box, as I drag over the text box, I also want to deal with some code issues there. For example, in this particular case, if my text happens to be larger than what will fit on the vertical area of the text box, and I've actually got the scroll button activated and I have much more text than is viewable, I want my mouse, as I'm doing dragging, to be able to move the scroll bar area up and down to find out where to drop my text. So that is part of the drag over area that I'm going to be dealing with. And then finally, we have the drag drop. And here's where we're going to be looking at whether I'm dragging to move the text or I'm dragging to drop a copy in place. So those are the issues we're looking at. The events are the mouse events of mouse down and mouse move, and also of the drag over, drag enter, and drag drop. I'm going to go first of all to our code and show you a couple of variables that I had to add to preserve some information as we did the process of the drag and drop. So I'm going to go to main form code, and I'm going to come up to the area where I've declared the variables. And what I've added into our area of declaring the variables is I've added a mouse's down Boolean switch, in a sense, to tell me if I clicked on the mouse down button key or not. Then I'm also going to store the text that I plan to move, because I'll be losing the selection of that text as I start the move process. So I need to preserve that in a text move string. And then I'm going to also set where that text came from in terms of its starting location, so I can go back later if it's a move and take that text out of that location. So these are the three variables I've added for drag and drop into the code. Now let's go to the drag and drop area itself, and I'll scroll down here, and I'm going to make the text or the image a little bit smaller for you, but so you can see all the code. And in our drag drop section, we begin with the issue of the mouse. And here, once again, just to remind you, in the text box, we set in design time the allow drop property to true, so it'll be able to sense and activate some of the events that we're looking at. So as I click the mouse down in the my text box, I want to examine, have I actually selected some text? Just clicking the mouse down alone doesn't mean anything unless I've selected some text. So I'm looking at the selected text length that I might have. If I do have that, what I'm going to do is capture that selected text and also its start position on that by using the selection start of the text. So I'm going to capture those two to the variables we defined up in our declaration area on that, and that'll start the process of the mouse moving. So I'm looking to see if my mouse button is down and I have text. Now I want to start dragging, and here's where we begin with the my text box mouse move part of that process. And so as this vent fires up and I'm starting to move my text with my mouse, I'm going to look and say, well, okay, is the mouse down? And we set that to true up above in the first process part. So I know I've clicked down the mouse button in this area. And then also I'm going to once again look and make certain my selection length is greater than 0, that I really do have something. Now what I'm going to be doing with that notification in this area is I want to set the drag drop area so that I can say, okay, for the text I'm selecting, which is the selection text here, I'm going to have either the drag drop effect of copy or the drag drop effect of move. And you'll see this as I begin the process of sharing the drag and drop. This is how the feedback to the user is displayed of the mouse. This cursor changes, and we see that the cursor shows a copy look or a move look as I hold down the bus or the control key and the mouse. And then once again, I'm quickly setting off the mouse is down on that to reset it for if I let go of the mouse somewhere down the line. So these two issues get us set ready for our dragging process and make certain that we've initiated that our selected text is going to be showing the drag drop effects of copy or move. Okay, now one of the things that's an issue in the next section we see that is the drag over event. When I come into the text box and maybe I have a lot of text in my text box and it's actually scrolled out of view where I want to locate something, what I want to do is grab the cursor's location information and cause the text box to scroll to that location and set its focus on it so I can see the cursor as I move it around in my text box. This is a real important part if I have anything greater than the size of my text box displaying at the time. So I can move to the top or to the bottom of my text box, and this will cause the text to scroll accordingly to get to where I want to go for my drop or move area. So this grabs the cursor through this logic here, and this is a point value returned with cursor position, and then we get it set so we know where to put it in our text box. I'm using the select of the text box, where the position begins and how long it is. In this case, I'm using 0. If you want your cursor to look a little fatter, you could put a 1 here if you want, but I think it's okay with just a 0 here for the section length on that. So we're scrolling with this part of code on the drag over. Now, as we come into the inner part, and we're actually in the text box dragging, one of the issues I have to look at is what I'm dragging actually text? If it's not text, then we really have no purpose in doing what we're doing and trying to drag and drop on that. So I'm going to examine with the eData get data present and make certain the format is a text format. After all, we're working with a text editor. Now, if this was a picture box or something else I was dealing with, this would be a different value here. But we're looking at the format of text. And if I don't have that kind of text, what I'm doing is I'm turning the drag effects to none. And you'll see that it'll go away because of I don't have anything that's a text that I'm dragging. But if I do have text, then I want to examine, am I copying or am I moving? And here's the code that looks for copying. And what is happening is, in this code, I'm examining to see, okay, if it is copy is an option, allow effects is drag effect copy. That's true. And also the user's holding down the control key, and that's done through here. If that's being the control key is down, then I want to make certain the drag effects allows for copy. So we're making the effect copy. If the person does not hold down the control key, then we're going to issue it as a move, and so we'll relocate the text based off of that. So the drag effect is copy or move, and if I don't have text, then it's going to be none. So that's what's happening with the drag enter issue. And then finally we get to a unique area of code, and that's the actual drop. Now this is sort of a unique situation. Normally we look at dragging and dropping between different controls on a form, but this is actually dragging and dropping within the same control, which meant that I had to sort of do some inventive code here that's unique, and I don't know if you'll ever see it out on the internet. What I'm doing is, first of all, once again, getting the cursor location. Remember, at this point in time, I'm dragging the text to a spot. So I'm going to get the cursor position and it'll be stored in the index. And then I want to do an insert of that text. So at this point, I'm using the insert command. So it's my text box text dot insert at the starting point of the index where the cursor is. And then I'm going to drop the text I have in this value of what I'm moving, and I have to cast it as a string to put it in place. So I'm doing an insert of the text into my text box. Well, that's fine and dandy, but now we need to deal with, well, okay, I've dropped that and inserted that text in my text box. Now, what if it was a move? And here's where I examine, was this a move, and also did I have some text to move? If I had a move and I had text to move, then what I'm going to do real quickly is find out where that text is that I just tried to move. So I'm looking at text to move and its starting position and doing a quick comparison, and it should find me a found position. So I'm looking for a situation that I found it. If the found position is greater than -1, then I do have a position I found. And at that point, I want to select the text of the found position and the text to move. Now, this is the original text. And then I'm going to quickly make it empty. Basically, I'm selecting it to highlight it, and then I'm setting it to string empty, which deletes that text out of place. Now, you could use also the cut option here, my text box dot cut. But in this case, I'm going to just do a string empty of that text. And then I have to do a little game here. since it's within the text box control I'm working with and not the whole control of value here, I need to examine where I moved that. So I'm looking at the found position of the original text versus the index of where I dropped it. Now, if it happens to be that I dropped it to the right of it, I've got a situation where this will not be true. But if I drop it the other way, then I need to reset the index for the length on that to offset it. And so this is a little game that I have to do just because I'm doing it within the same control on that. If I was going from one control to another, that wouldn't be a problem. But here is a situation where I'm actually doing it within the same control. And so I have to relocate my index through this bit of code. Okay, I've got my index relocated. So now I'm going to highlight the text by doing a select, starting with the index position I've now calculated, and also going for the length of the text that I've dropped in place. Then I'm going to scroll to that location, set focus, remind myself that I've modified this text by what I just did, and then I'm going to do a quick cleanup of setting the text to move and the text to move start position to 0. So there's a lot going on for a drag and drop, and this particular code that we're putting in, this whole section for drag and drop, is not really needed for our mimicking of the Notepad application, but this addition makes it a little bit more special than Notepad on that. So let's watch it in action. So I'm going to compile it, and we have our text box popping up, and it is also at the same position where we last left off the last lesson we worked with. So that is working fine. I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to change it a little bit in terms of size, so it'll be a little larger for you to see. And I'm going to shift that just a minute and get it back so you can see it. Now, what we're going to do is bring in some text and see how the drag and drop works. Okay, I'm going to open. We'll go out here, and I think what I'm going to bring in is this nice quote from a lawyer back in the early days of our country and the beginning of our country. And here we've got the text in place, and it also has the font and the font color that we selected the last time we did it. So it's preserved that with our settings. Now let's say I wanted to move something. Maybe I wanted to move Mr. Burke's name, make his last name first. So I've dragged it. Now I'm holding down my mouse button, and I'm getting ready to do a selection. And if I hold down this and come out, you'll see my mouse has changed, my cursor, and you'll see a little box under my arrow. And you'll see that the cursor location tracks to where I'm at in there on that. So I can move it over there and drop it in place if I want. I'm going to also hold down my control key. Let's see if that changes. Well, it won't right now. I'm going to release it and move Burke around on that. And then so we saw the text move. Now I'm going to select it again. This time I'm going to hold down the mouse button and the control key and then start to come out. And you'll see now I have the drag drop effect as move, not as copy. And we'll see it come over here, and I'll drop it in place. And now we've got it copied on that. And so we got two Burkes on that. So we can drag and not hold it down, and it'll act as move on that, so I can move it. Or I can drag it and hold down the control key and make a copy of it. And in fact, I'll put it at the end of here. We'll have two Burkes there. And we still have the ability to highlight and delete as normal, so we can change things again on that. Once again, I'll do a move by holding down the control key and moving it around and releasing. And then we can edit. Now let's take a larger text and see the scrolling issue that I was talking about. So let me grab a bigger text. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save the change. Let's go get Mr. Abraham Lincoln on that, his Gettysburg Address. Let me see if I can find that. There it is, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Okay, now you see that it's larger than I have the ability to see. Let's say I wanted to move this whole heading area down to the bottom. So I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to do a move. So I'm not going to hold down the control key. I'm going to grab it, and now watch as I come down. As I hit the boundary of the text box, my scrolling event will start taking place as it changes, and you'll see I can scroll to the bottom and release on that. So that's where the ability to follow the cursor and scrolling the text is really important. Otherwise, I couldn't get outside the area on that. Once again, I'll grab it, do a move up, and as I touch the top of the boundary, the cursor starts moving, and I can slide up to the top and release. And now we'll see that it's at the very top where we started out on that. So the ability to do that's nice. Now I'm going to fire off Microsoft Wordpad, and let me get Wordpad going here. Wordpad has the ability to do drag and drop, and I'll just put part of this up here for you to see. And I'm going to type in my name. Well, I can type. There we go. I've got the name, and I'm going to select it. And let's say I'm going to replace President Abraham Lincoln with my name. Well, I can, once again, hold down this, and I can drag this over to that location. Let me get back up to where it was at. Get very about the top there. And let's say I want to put it right there, and I'll let go. And I've got it from another application as well on that. So I can also move President Abraham Lincoln to a copy, and I'll move him over here to this application. And so I've got him in there as well on that. So we can do drag and drop between applications that allow drag and drop. We can do drag and drop within. And our extra code that we had to code for was to take care of the issue of the situation of dragging and dropping within our same control versus moving it to controls within the same form. So the important thing I had to code for was this issue of repositioning. Normally you wouldn't have to do that if it was two different controls. You'd only examine whether you were doing a move, and if you were doing a move, you'd want to clear out the text you just moved after you pasted in the new location. So there's a little bit there to do. I also highly recommend you go out to Microsoft Development Network and take a look at their referencing to drag and drop. There are also other examples out there to use, and you can use this code as well as a model. But I've designed this specifically for drag and drop within the context of doing it within the same control of a text box. And that makes that a little bit more unique than you'll see out on the internet. And hopefully you've learned something a little bit more. I know I had to work about a day to figure out how to do it within the same text box, because I had never seen it done. I examined to see if there was any other documentation on it, and there wasn't. So I had to try with trial and error till I got the code to do what I wanted to do. And that's part of the programming process too. Not always will you have someplace else you can go for reference. You'll have to use your own knowledge of the code and how it works to develop something brand new that you've never seen before. And that gives you a good sense of satisfaction too once you can do it. So I highly recommend you get your hands dirty in the code. Go out to pastebin.com and take a look at the code I have out there for drag and drop, as well as the other codes that I have out there for the text box and other videos that I produced. Study that code carefully and go out to Microsoft Development Network and look at the code in terms of what it means and what it's doing, so that you understand every line of the code. Once you get an idea of how to do small pieces and parts of a program, then it's just putting the pieces and parts together to get something that's unique that you want to create. So until next time, take care, get your hands dirty in the code, and come back and see us again.